Shalom everyone. So I want to come up here and make this quick little video. I'm going to be addressing two topics. One, I want to go ahead and get out and say that I'm going to be sharing some updates to my DNA. Since I've added my father on, and then also I guess just with the companies fine-tuning their scientific equations, they have been able to recalculate my DNA, and I found some interesting things that I think I want to share with you all. But then also I wanted to say that I'm not going to be speaking on the subject of Aboriginal Native Americans anymore, simply because it has become a headache in my life. There has been people that's jumped in my comment section saying some of the most irrational, ridiculous, ignorant things I've ever heard of in my life. And I just don't have the need or find the importance of allowing that into my life. So I'm not going to speak on that anymore. I have made my claim. Everyone who's seen my videos know where I stand on that. And I don't anticipate changing that anytime soon, or really at all. At the end of the day, let me just say this. I've come across 3 running narratives for these people that I find it very interesting. The first one is that, of course, they're Shemitic, they're Israelites, which I find to be, in my particular opinion, to be the most commonly believed notion, or theory, whatever you want to call it, most common belief. Then I find that there's people that say that these people they were just in America, they never came from Africa, or if they did come from Africa, it was very long ago. And I guess almost to the point where it doesn't matter anymore, which I think is also just as silly. And then I find also another running theory or belief is that these people were Moors. And I really don't believe the latter two, simply because they don't make sense to me. I've said before, nobody originated in the Americas. Nobody as a human nobody originated in the Americas. Everyone came from Adam, which everyone came from Africa, especially particularly the melanated colored people, black people. They came from Adam, which was created and formed in the dust of the earth in Africa. The Garden of Eden is believed to have been in the eastern part of Africa, somewhere near Ethiopia, Somalia, in that region, somewhere in that area. So the fact that they were just in the Americas and didn't come from anywhere, or that maybe is not important anymore because they've been here so long, I think that's ridiculous. The second reason, the Moors, I have a hard time believing that, simply because when I read about the Moors in history, what little I have read about them, I haven't really done a huge study on them because I believe they're Hamitic. They're North African Berber. They're a North African Berber tribe, black people, of course, but when they encountered the Caucasian man, the white man, whatever you want to call him in Europe, from my understanding, they civilized him. They tamed him, if you will. They taught them how to read. They taught them how to do mathematics and write and all that stuff. They also taught them how to bathe and bathe properly, and bathe more than just once a week or every few days, whatever, how you're supposed to bathe every day. They also conquered Spain and ruled over there for over 800 years. So in my opinion, I can't seem to put together that these people in the Americas and in the Caribbean, because the Caribbean is considered North America as well, I can't seem to process that these people from the Americas are from this conqueror's bloodline, that when they encountered the white man, they tamed him, if you will, and then also they conquered countries and they've ruled for over 800 years. These people in the Americas, if they're from this bloodline, I find it hard to believe, like, why is that when they encountered the white man, they were ripped to shreds, they were murdered, they were poisoned, so to speak, with illnesses and diseases. They were shipped off from America to Europe and sent into slavery there. So I just don't understand how, the tribes in North America and then also the Caribbean, the Arawak Indian, how if they're Moors, then why weren't they able to do the same? That's just my opinion. Also, I've said before multiple times that my mother's father, my grandfather, was a Native American. That is the running narrative, that's the running story. But I can tell you this much, he was not a Moor. He was not a North African. He was not Hamite. He was very Negro. He was very Shemitic. So if that means that he was not a Native American, then fine, so be it. That is the story that we know. I didn't meet him before he passed away. So I really can't go to him and say, hey, granddad, tell me about that. I don't really know much about what tribe or whatever he may have been from. I just know that he was said to be a Native American. But I can tell you this much, he wasn't a Moor. He's not a North African Berber. I, myself, my dad, my mom, we don't have any North African DNA in us. And if there is any traces of it, it's like 2% or less. And I will believe I'll go into that when I do the updates on the DNA. So anyway, then, I also want to just say that I'm not going to be speaking on that anymore. Some people have taken it upon themselves to jump in my comment section and not only just put out their narratives or whatever, and I guess in their way of trying to correct someone, I'm not going to switch anything about what I'm doing simply because someone else said something or because somebody has a difference of opinion. That's not who I am, It ain't gonna happen. I'm not doing that. So your comments, if that's what you're trying to accomplish in your comments, then I think you need to rethink that, because you're not gonna get it. And then there's also some people that said, I don't want to be black because I'm talking about Native Americans, which if you actually watch the whole video and just not the first 2 minutes or the point where, I started to say something that disagreed with what you believe, and then turn it off. If you actually watch the whole video, you'll see that I was never ever claiming that these Native Americans were not Africans or not of African descent. And what I mean by Africans, I'm not saying Hamitic, I'm saying from the continent of Africa. So I don't see how you can think that me talking about a Native American means that I don't want to be black. Now, I know there are some people that are Native Americans that don't have any claim to Africa. I think that's sad, but that's them. So I think that that's just ridiculous. If you knew me, or actually no one on YouTube knows me, you just see my face and hear my voice a couple of times a week, if that much. But you really don't know me. But if you see how I present myself, if you knew what I actually did on YouTube, you will see that everything that I do goes back to the continent of Africa, or Afro-Asia, whatever you want to call it, particularly Israel. So I think that's quite silly and preposterous. I also find it annoying that I feel like the Black American is the most deprived black person on the face of the earth when it comes to knowing who you are and where you come from. But yet and still, somehow, when they get a little bit of information, they act as if they've gotten the Holy Grail and want to project on everybody else what it is they believe. And I think that's quite ignorant. The scripture says that a fool is always speaking, but a wise man knows when to keep his mouth. Because James talks about taming your tongue. Being able to know when to speak and when not to speak is key, it's vital. And I feel like a lot of times Black Americans, in my experience, have not very much so mastered that. They get something and they run with it, and then they want to jump on everybody else's throat if you're not saying that same narrative. And I think that's ignorant. I think that's a part of wisdom that people need to learn and adapt into their life. So I wanted to say that I'm not going to be speaking on that subject anymore because it has become a headache. I don't care who people say they are. I know what I believe. And at the end of the day, the Most High knows who his people are. He's the ones gathering them, not me. So I don't need to know where every single Israelite is on the face of the earth. I need to make sure that my purpose is serving and living a life that's pleasing to the Most High Yah, so that I will be deemed worthy and righteous to enter into the New Jerusalem with him. So I'm going to leave that there, and I hope that that's a blessing to someone, and give up some clarity. And also I want to say thank you to all my new subscribers. I see that I'm well over 900 now, and I just want to say thank you all. To those who are new, welcome, and to those who have been following me, thank you so much for your continued support, and I'll see you in the next one. Shalom, shalom.
Alright guys, so this is the part of the video where I'm going to do my DNA updates, and I'm going to try not to make this very long. There are quite a few things that I want to cover. I'm trying to get through them quickly, and I want to go ahead and apologize for the quality of the audio of this video. I have to record my desktop because my laptop is just not complying, so I don't really like the sound of this one too much. It sounds a little muffled, but I don't really know how to change it, so I apologize for that, and I'll try to edit that in the video and make it louder and sound as clear as much as possible. I also want to apologize in advance for the noises that you may hear. I live near the airport, so you may hear an airplane fly over. My neighbor is doing his yard work, so he's out there doing some weed whacking, and then I have the dryer going, drying some clothes. So I apologize in advance if there's any noise. I hope it doesn't pick up very well. But I'm going to go ahead and get started here, just to jump right into it. So first of all, what I want to share with this on my screen here is that this is my dad's DNA test results. He did 23andMe like I did, and I really want to share the paternal haplogroup because I found some interesting things there. So this is the login screen for my dad. His name's up here, and then this is his stuff, his information. But I'm not going to break down the composition, but I want to just point out the paternal haplogroup because I find it interesting, some of the things that they're starting to point out now. I do know that some people do not like DNA tests for whatever reason. They have a belief that it's a hoax and it's fake. And I know I hear the stories out there about it, but you know, I am not particularly one of those people that subscribe to that. So if you are one of those people, then you know, I would say this video is not for you, and I would just encourage you to go ahead on and turn off the video and you know, go on and have a great day. All right, so this is my dad's paternal haplogroup. It's O-M110. It came out of Eastern, well, they say, let me jump down, hold on. Started in Eastern Africa. It had a couple of mutations and started in Eastern Africa down here, which is what I was saying, that life started in this region here. This is where the Garden of Eden was believed to be, especially when you look at the scriptures. And then there's a book out there called, I know a lot of people are probably familiar with this already, From Babylon to Timbuktu. Dr. Rudolph Windsor, in that book, he lays out the location very well, very clearly, and it lists the scriptures that talks about the rivers that run into or throughout or whatever the Garden of Eden. So it, based off of where the rivers are located, it kind of puts the Garden of Eden location here in this region, like I was saying earlier, in the eastern part of Africa. So my dad's haplogroup started in this region, then it moved its way up here, and this is the one I want to point out to speak to. Haplogroup F-M89 is when the first mutation occurred. And it says here, for more than 100,000 years, your paternal, speaking about my dad, your paternal line ancestors gradually moved north, following available prey and resources. That's what they say. Who knows? But anyway, following available prey and resources as a shifting climate made new routes hospitable and sealed off others. Then around 60,000 years ago, according to them, again, these dates seem a bit stretched to me, but you know, that's science. But around 60,000 years ago, a small group, this is what I really wanted to point out here, a small group ventured across the Red Sea and deeper into Southwest Asia. Your ancestors were among these men. And the next step in their story is marked by the rise of haplogroup F-M89 in the Arabian Peninsula. So I thought that was interesting because, you know, as we read the stories in the Bible, and then just being an Israelite person, I find it, you know, we know who crossed the Red Sea. I'm not saying anybody else didn't cross the Red Sea, but you know, nobody else could have ventured across from one part of the country or the land to another part of the land. But we know for a fact that as a whole, collectively, there's only one group of people, one nation that ever did that, and that's the Israelites. And so I find it interesting now that science is actually confessing, in a way, if you will, you know, history and truth. You know, being an Israelite, a lot of times, you know, it's not necessarily something that you can always prove with a book. You know, sometimes it's just, you know, because the Most High put it in you. You know, He's dealing with your spirit. You just know. And if you're not an Israelite, then I don't know if you would understand what we're saying. Of course, we use scriptures in the book of, you know, Deuteronomy and things like that to relay it naturally and logically. But it, you know, it comes from within, you know, because the scripture says that the Most High is going to cause us to come back into wake up and remember who we are and be able to come back to Him in the land of our captivity. And you see a lot of Negroes around the world doing that all over. And so I just find it interesting now that, you know, history and science are kind of finally telling the truth and pairing up. So I thought that was interesting that the Red Sea crossed the Red Sea. It's interesting. So now I want to go to me. This is, oh, wait a minute. Okay, here we go. So I had to log in as myself. So this is now my results. I did 23andMe. And as you can see, these are my breakdowns. This is my dad. You can tell that this is my dad that did it, that I showed you earlier, because you can see his haplogroup here. This is my maternal haplogroup, which I want to talk to in a little bit too, but right now I just want to break down the ancestry composition. A few of it has changed, but not a whole lot, but there are some changes to it. And so this is it here. And so it says that I am 89%, just slightly under 90% sub-Saharan African. And then out of the total of that, West African makes up 88% of it, and then there's 0.7% African hunter-gatherer. My European total is 9.5%, with 5 of that being British and Irish, which we know because the pilgrims that came to settle the New World, so-called, if you will, came from that region of the planet, Britain and the Great Britain, all that stuff. And then there's 0.4 Italian, 0.2% Iberian, and 2.5% broadly Northwestern European, and then broadly European 1%. This is East Asian and Native American, and like I said, a lot of people know already now, but some people may not know that may be watching this. The typical Native American that we see today, the yellow-skinned, white-skinned one, they're not true Native Americans. They are Mongolians that crossed the Bering Strait. So this DNA here, I think a lot of people, when they do DNA tests and they see that they have 0 or, you know, very small traces amount of Native American, they automatically think that, oh, my grandmama or my granddaddy or whoever, my mama lied when we said that our family had Native American in me. No, not necessarily, because of the simple fact that they are testing this against the Asian, the Bering Strait. They're not testing this against the copper-colored DNA. So these Native Americans here, this doesn't surprise me at all because I'm not Asian. That 0.9% is very, I don't even know where they got that from. But I'm not an Asian in the sense of a modern day Asian. I'm an Afro-Asiatic. So anyway, that's 0.9%. Western Asia and Northern Africa, 0.3%. And this is important because, like I was saying before earlier, there are some people out here saying that Native Americans are Moors, and you know, I just personally don't believe that. I don't see that. I don't see how they could be. But even if they are, fine and well, you know, then that, you know, it is what it is. But if my grandfather was a Moor, I would have more than 0.3% DNA in me. So maybe the narrative is that he wasn't, either he wasn't a Moor or maybe he just wasn't a Aboriginal American. But I would think that as many African Americans that are doing tests today, you would see more North African DNA pull up in them, simply because we know that the Israelite slaves that were taken from the coast of West Africa and just from the continent of Africa period and brought to the Americas highly intermingled with the Native Americans that were here, that were also warped into slavery right along beside us, that were called Negroes right along beside us. Some of the same things that we suffered, they suffered as well. You know, our people intermingle. You know, those two people intermingle in marriage. So a lot of African Americans would highly have that DNA in them. So I personally feel like if they were actually truly Moors, North African Hamites, then you would see more African Americans with this DNA in them. But very few African Americans that I've seen have any North African DNA in them, and if they do, it's small amounts. So I just wanted to share that. And then the next thing that I wanted to go to is to speak on my maternal haplogroup, because I found some interesting things with that as well. Okay, so it says here my maternal haplogroup is L3B1A. And it started once again in the East African region. This looks a little bit like Central Africa, actually. But I wanted to, okay. So here's another one. Oh, okay, now this is new. This is not even what I wanted to show, but I just happened to see it, so praise Yah for this. But I don't even recall reading this, but it says here haplogroup L3, which is a branch of L. Your branch of L is haplogroup L3, which arose from a woman who likely lived in Eastern Africa between 60 to 70,000 years ago. Then it says, while many of her descendants remained in Africa, one small group ventured east across the Red Sea. So once again, you see that we are crossing the Red Sea, my ancestry DNA, likely across the narrow Bab el Mandeb into the tip of the Arabian Peninsula. And if you remember the story in Numbers, I believe it is chapter 20, verses 14 through 21, I believe is where Moses was leading the Israelites out of Egypt, and they were coming, I can't zoom in here, but you know, they were crossing right here. This is the Red Sea here. And they were crossing this region here, and then they entered into Arabia, which was back then called, Idumea, consider Idumea Edom. Edom is a smaller part now, but I believe the scripture says that Edom and Saudi Arabia kind of was like one, that whole region was all of Edom. So anyway, we crossed into like what's considered the northern tip of, well, not we per se, but our ancestors, the Israelites, crossed into what's considered the northern tip of Saudi Arabia, which would be Edom in that time frame. And Moses he sent messengers to the king of Edom to ask him, could we cross through? Could our ancestors cross? Could they cross through? We'll keep everything to ourselves. We won't even stop. We'll just get in and get out. And so, of course, because the king of Idumea hated Israel so much because of what happened between Esau and Jacob centuries ago at that time, they said no, and if you do, we're going to come out and chase you with the sword. So basically Moses had to find another route. So I find it interesting that here, once again, science is backing history, even though these are stories that people like to call fairy tales and fake. I think those are just from people who just don't have the spirit of the Most High, who just don't know what they're talking about. They call it they call it fairy tales and fake, but even though the Bible itself parallels a lot of things in history, there's people that are talked about and researched through other scholars that the Bible talks about as well. So the Bible speaks about people that, like for instance, Taharka and Darius and Ptolemy and all these different Alexander the Great. These people are mentioned in these historical Israelite scriptures, and these are real people that our ancestors encountered, but they're also real people outside of the Bible. Then why would the Bible be fairy tales and not the rest of the information the scholars are finding? So anyway, I just find it interesting that now science is starting to slowly but surely connect the two between fact and history and scriptures and things of that nature, and then what really happened with our science, with our DNA and science. So I find that interesting, especially being a Black Negro girl, where a lot of people still to this day don't believe that Negroes have any significance or value, and then certainly they can't be any type of Jew or Israelite or Hebrew or Irve or whatever. I find it interesting that my haplogroup, which is, as you can see, they're saying is 60 to 180,000 years old, came from this region. I have no Ashkenazi DNA in me. You can see that I have very little European DNA. The little that I do have, I believe that's not even a full Caucasian, modern, white European DNA today. I think some of that, like the Iberian Peninsula, I think some of that points back to the time where the Jews lived in Spain, because it speaks about that in the blurb. And I might go back to that. Let me get a check on time. Okay, not too bad. And I might go back to that to show you guys that. But okay, to keep going, the next thing that I wanted to show you was that it says here, L3B. I'm going to jump down a little bit. I'm going to start in the middle towards the end of actually, no, let me start here. So it says your maternal line stems from a branch of L3 called L3B. Haplogroup L3B is a relatively young branch of L3 that originated in Western Africa, where we know the Israelites fled to. A good portion of them, some fled down the coast of Africa, the side, and went down into South Africa and made little stops here and there along the way, which we know for a fact. Give me 1 second, you guys. Sorry, I have a phone call coming through. Alright guys, sorry about that. I had to tend to a call that came through. So anyway, it says that this originated in Western Africa. So like I was saying, that we know that our ancestors went to western parts of Africa. They fled into Africa. They did not flee north like some people like to preach and say they did, because that wouldn't make sense. If your opposing opposition enemy is coming from the north, why would you run into them? You would run away from them. And so they went further into Africa. When a lot of us went to West Africa, and then there's those that went down the coast and ended up in South Africa, like the Limba, and I personally believe the Zulu and the Hosa and other tribes down there as well. But then also some parts of Central, what's called Central Africa today, because especially the Congo, I believe there's a large concentration of Israelites there as well. Because if you remember, the Congo was considered at one point West Africa as well, and now it's considered Central Africa. So I believe that there's a large population of Israelites in Sub-Saharan Africa, period, and scattered across every country, of course, but specifically right now I'm talking about Sub-Saharan Africa. So then I'm going to jump down here. It says here, but when the ice age subsided about 10,000 years ago, the Sahara became much more hospitable. Migrants carried L3B all the way to the Mediterranean coast and even into the Middle East, passing through lush landscapes that are nothing but sand dunes today. Now L3B is most common in western, northern, and northeastern, which northeastern we know that to be, I consider that to be Israel, Africa, and across the Atlantic and the Americas as a result of the Atlantic slave trade from West Africa. So my point is that once again, you can see that science and history is starting to say the same thing, which it always said the same thing, but there was a great cover-up, which we know, but now it's starting to speak out. And I think that has nothing to do with, I think that has everything to do with solely just the simple fact that Israel is slowly but surely coming back to where they're going to be reverted and put back on top. The scripture says in, I think it's 2nd Esdras, but it says that Esau is the end of this world and Jacob is the beginning of the one to come. And so as we are continuing out, getting to the end of this world, and things are playing out the way they are, and the final battle is going to happen, all those things are going to come to pass, then then Jacob's going to be back on top, and Israel's going to be the reigning ruling class, as it was already, predestined to be before any of this stuff began to happen. Because so this is just me talking. As I believe, as we get closer to that age coming into, you'll begin to see more and more truths coming out, because the lies and stuff like that, the cover-ups, they're not going to last. They're going to fade away at some point in time. And so I'm just excited to see that, especially since a lot of people still today think that Israelis or white people are Jews and Israelites, and it's not true. And then they just cannot seem to process that a Negro person could be anything, like I said, significant, yet let alone be an Israelite. Well, now you can see my DNA, and I have no Ashkenazi Jewish in me. I have no Sephardic, no European, none of that nonsense in me, period. So now, actually, you know what? I said I was going to go back and show you all something. So let me do that real quick. Okay, so I said I wanted to show you all the little verbiage that they have for Iberian Peninsula, because like I was saying, if anything, I think the European DNA that I have, in me, this 5.4%, I believe this is probably the modern day European Caucasian DNA. Then the rest of this probably dates back to an ancient archaic DNA, which would not be this modern day white European DNA. That's just my thought. I could be wrong, but that's just what I believe. So the Iberian Peninsula, 0.2%, and it's so small simply because of the fact that, again, this is my thought. Today the Iberian Peninsula is inhabited by modern day Caucasian European people, and so the black DNA is not as prevalent or as strong there as it once was. So I think that's probably why I only have about 2%, because I believe, like I said, the only white European, modern day European, the DNA that I think I have is 5% British and Irish, and that wouldn't necessarily match with the same Iberian Peninsula because there were some mutations along the way. So I think out of the population in the Iberian Peninsula, which would be Spain and Portugal, I only match with about 2.2%, because the overall at this moment there is a modern day white European DNA. So anyway, the blurb here says the genetic landscape of the Iberian Peninsula, represented today by the people of Spain and Portugal, was influenced by several Mediterranean civilizations, including 800 years of Arabic North African rule. Now, a small North African genetic signature is present in Iberian DNA, and over 8% of Spanish words carry Arabic origins. Conquistador from Portugal and Spain colonized parts of Africa, Oceania, and the Americas, and Iberian DNA is now relatively common in the Latino peoples from Central and South America. So again, going back to what I was saying earlier, if the Native Americans truly were North Africans, and if my grandfather truly was a Native American, I would think that I would have more North African DNA, because they're saying here that this 0.2% more than likely possibly goes back to a Northern African Arabic bloodline. And so, I don't know if it's just, hey, maybe my grandfather wasn't a Native American, because maybe the Native Americans, the Aboriginals, truly were Moors, or maybe they weren't Moors, or maybe there was a mixture. I don't know. But either way, I feel like if that was if one of the two was correct, I would somehow have North African DNA in me, or include, especially a more significant amount of North African DNA versus this 0.2%. So now I want to go to my mom. This is my mom's DNA test. She did Ancestry. She didn't do 23andMe like my dad and I. Okay, this is what I want. So this is hers, and so she's 26% Ivory Coast, Ghana, 18% Nigerian, 16% Benin, Togo, 16% African, Africa, Southeastern Bantu, and then she's only 8% Scandinavian. And then low confidence region, she's 7% Senegal, 4% Cameroon, Congo, 2% Great Britain, 1% Ireland, Scotland, Wales, less than 1% North Africa. So again, like I was saying, if her dad was a true Native American, which some people believe are Moors, I would think that she would have a whole lot more than less than 1% North African DNA in her. So again, maybe he wasn't truly a Native American or Aboriginal, or maybe the Aboriginal bloodline isn't necessarily a North African bloodline. And I know a lot of people believe, there's some people out there that believe that, and I'm not trying to be offensive or disrespectful to your beliefs. I'm not trying to change it or say anybody's. I'm just stating my point of the matter. I could be completely wrong, and like I said, also at the end of the day, I don't really care anymore. I'm not trying to prove anybody's points, but I'm just making a statement that one of the two. I don't have any North African blood in me, no Berbers or nothing like that, no Hamitic blood in me like that. And if I do it, they're very, very, very small trace amounts. So my mom, once you calculate this, and then she's less than 1% Africa, South Central hunter-gatherer, less than 1% Europe West. So my mom, she's about 88%. Once you calculate all this together, she's about 88% African, and then about 14 or so less than that, about 11 to 12 actually percent European. And then I want to go over here to this one. Let me check time again because I don't want to make this too long. Okay. So then let's see here. So this is her. I did her raw DNA. I ran it into myheritage.com here, and so you can see her ethnicity report here. They have 86% African, with 71% of that being West Africa, breaking down to 40. I'm going to roll up. Breaking down to 47% Nigerian and 24% Sierra Leone. East African, she's 15%, with 14% being Kenyan, which I know there are some Israelite Bantu tribes in Kenya, like the Luhaya, or also the there's another one, the Kikuyu. I think there's some other ones as well, but then there's also 1% Maasai. I was looking at the Maasai as being closely related to, or similar, like their attire is and their accessories is very similar to the Zulu to me, but I don't think that they are Israelite. I think they are Hamitic tribes. And then her European DNA is 11%. You can see the breakdown there. Again, you can see her Iberian Peninsula, 3%. And then the blurb verbiage here talks about Spain and Portugal and all that. And then I want to point this out here. In 1492, the Jews were expelled from the region. Now, I feel like it's very interesting that they're putting the Jews in here. Now, they are probably trying to tie in the white Jews, whatever. But still, looking at this time frame, the white people, they're talking about black people, they're talking about Negroes if you look at the time frame. So it says in 1492 Jews were expelled from the region and Christopher Columbus set sail for the Americas, kicking off the age of exploration, yada 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 yada. Iberian explorers spread across the Americas, parts of Africa, and the Indian subcontinent. Okay, so my point is that once again, if her father was a true Native American, Aboriginal, which some people say are Moors, North African, she would definitely have more percentage of this in her, but she doesn't. So maybe he wasn't, or maybe they're not. And the reason why I'm saying that they're not is because like I said, I stated my points before why I feel like it doesn't make sense to me. They could be Moors, and then also I find other people who are strictly Native Americans, and they preach that, and they are on YouTube and they're solely teaching about Israelite origins in the Native American tribes. So maybe there was a mixture. Maybe there were some people, because we know that there were many different bloodlines that came to the Americas. There's different mounds and stuff like that, and pyramids across the continent of North America. So we definitely know that there was a mixture of bloodlines. The Olmec tribe, some people believe those are Israelites, and some people believe they're Hamitics. I'm not really sure. If I had to guess out right now, I would just guess and lean a little bit more towards Hamitics, but I'm not 100% sure, so don't quote me on that. But there's a lot of different bloodlines, so maybe there were a lot of different bloodlines that were coming in and settling that hold claim to being here before Christopher Columbus. So maybe that's the case, but I know that my grandfather was not a Moor. He was a Negro. He was of a Shemitic bloodline. And then another thing I want to point out here is the Middle East she has, which I find interesting because neither my dad or myself have this, but she has 2% Middle Eastern. And then it goes here to talk about the Levant region, and it says that it's a region in the Eastern Mediterranean. It's home to speakers of Arabic, Hebrew, Aramaic, and other Semitic languages. Now, it's a very small percentage because, again, I don't believe that, this is just my thought process now, collecting DNA from these regions, I believe it's one or two things. Very few people are probably going to do DNA tests from this region because, they know who they are, where they come from, so they don't need to do DNA tests. Secondly, I also believe that the people that would do a DNA test here would be the white Europeans, the white Israelis that are in this land illegally, in that land illegally, and trying to claim hold to it when they have no right to it. But then also, who's to say that the people that run this, these companies, because we know that they're white people, European, a lot of times they're Jewish people, they're probably not going to collect or obtain DNA from the native blacks there. So I just find it interesting that out of their test pool, my mom still managed to get 2%, and she doesn't have any Ashkenazi or nothing like that in her. But I still find it interesting that she found that she matched with 1.9%, even that little bit, without having any Ashkenazi Jew or European Jew in them. So where's this 0.2% coming from, or 2% coming from, 1.9% coming from? I believe that it is somehow matching with a very considered to be a very ancient bloodline there, the Jews bloodline, the Jewish blood, the black Hebrew bloodline there. And so I think that's interesting that she pulled it up. I think that's amazing. And then again, Native American, 0.8%. So this is what I did on GEDmatch. So since my DNA changed a little bit, once I added my dad in, and then some of their calculations updated, because they'll let you know the science that we do, that DNA doesn't change, but the science they use to analyze it does. So once all that came out and I realized that there was a new test out there, I ran it again in GEDmatch. And so a lot of the tribes and stuff that I had on the first time that I did it, it's not in here anymore. And I think it's interesting how they break it down even more to what I believe to be and perceive to be more Bantu Israelite tribes. So I am a split down the middle, strictly down the middle between West and South African tribes. But this, I'm not going to go through all the tests, but this is the one that I wanted to show particularly because it has something interesting on it. And so this is the Punt DNALK8 Africa Only 4 Ancestors Oracle. Long title, but anyway, it says here that I am, out of all the populations that they have in their pool, they tested me against it, and this is what I came out to be the most, really only. So I am Western Benue Congo at 52%. Then there's Eastern Benue Congo, which is at 23%. And then there's this thing called Western Semitic here at 12% that I find interesting. And I wasn't expecting to see that, but I wasn't expecting to see anything Semitic because I didn't think at one point in time that they would, tell the truth that blatantly in our face. But the truth has always been in our faces. So then I'll go down here and that I'm Nilo-Saharan, Ubangian Congo, Eastern hunter-gatherer, Southern hunter-gatherer, and Omatic, which is the Ethiopian tribe. Very ancient Ethiopian tribe. And I apologize if I butchered those names. So anyway, go down here. These are the top 20 tribes that I am out of their test pool. So it starts with Mali, the Mandinka tribe, Chad, Kaba, Nigeria, Hausa, Democratic Republic of Congo, Cameroon, Bamuan, Nigeria, Igbo, Cameroon, Fang or Fang, Cameroon, Mada, Nigeria, Yoruba, Ghana, Brong, South Africa, and Nguni, which are the Bantu tribes down there, which I believe are Israelite tribes. Then there's the Mali Bambaran, which is interesting because I was just watching a video a few weeks ago on these people, and I had no idea that I'd match with them. Anyway, so then Kenyan Bantu, Nigerian Fulani, South African Pedi or PD, South African Bantu, South African Sotu or Swana, South African Xhosa, and then Chad and Bulala. So I find that very interesting. And then going back up here where it talks about Western Semitic, if I Google Western Semitic, this is what comes up. There's a lot of different things, but I want to point this out. So Western Semitic languages, of course, it's going to give you all these different things. But the thing I want to point out here is, what is a Semitic people? Somebody may ask the question. It says a Semite, which I actually should be, in my opinion, Shemite. A Shemite person is a person speaking one of a group of related languages, presumably derived from a common language, Semitic or Shemitic. The term came to include Arabs, Akkadians, Canaanites, some Ethiopians, and Aramean tribes, and including Hebrews. So I find it interesting that once again, history and science is starting to come out and starting to come out and actually tell the truth. Okay, y'all, I'm sorry for all these pop-ups. This is annoying. What is going on? History and science is starting to finally come out and tell the truth. Well, it did at one point, but then, you know, there's the great takeover, and now that takeover is, that coup is now being demolished and being split, and so it's coming back to tell the truth. And so I find it once again very interesting for people that believe that Jews are only white and can only be white. Anyway, I just find it interesting, you know, that a little Negro girl from America would have this DNA in her, this blood in her that many people believe that I shouldn't have, I'm not supposed to have. So I think that's interesting. I thought that was pretty cool. So the last thing I want to point out also is going back into the topic of the Native Americans not being Shemites or maybe being Shemites. There's a claim that I heard from a sister here on YouTube. She brought out, she pointed this out. I had never heard this before watching it on her channel a few months back, and she pointed out something that made me think. And now I'm not saying that this is, you know, what I'm going to share is 100% accurate. I haven't dug into it deeply. I just like to see things and make connections, and I think about it and I ponder on it, and I'm like, this makes sense, you know, maybe what if. So I want to share that with you all, and then you all can do your own study on it if you want to. But I'm going to be reading here from Jubilees, the book of Jubilees, chapter 8, and this is talking about the land being broken up and split between the three sons of Noah. I'm not going to read all of this. I'm going to point out just a few things. So I'm going to start here, verse 8. I'm going to pick up here. It says, "And in the 6th year thereof she bare him a son, and she called his name Peleg. For in the days when he was born, the children of Noah began to divide the earth amongst themselves. For this reason he was called Peleg." And I think Peleg means to break up or to divide or split or something like that. So then it goes on to outline everybody's land and Shem's land and all that. I'm going to jump down to, I think it's going to be verse 18 here, and it says, "And Noah rejoiced that this portion came forth for Shem." And you can go back and read it in your own spare time if you haven't already. And I gotta stop because there's another video. Let me pause. Another call coming through. Let me pause this. Sorry. All right, guys. So sorry about that. I don't even remember what I was saying last, but I'm gonna pick up here. Verse 18, and it says, "And Noah rejoiced that this portion came forth for Shem and for his sons, and he remembered all that he had spoken with his mouth in prophecy. For he had said, Blessed be the Lord God of Shem, and may the Lord dwell in the dwelling of Shem. And he knew that the Garden of Eden is the Holy of Holies, and the dwelling of the Lord, and Mount Sinai, the center of the desert, and Mount Zion, the center of the navel of the earth. These three were created as holy places facing each other. And he blessed the God of gods, who had put the word of the Most High into his mouth, and the Lord forevermore. And he knew that a blessed portion and a blessing had come to Shem and his sons unto the generations forever. The whole land of Eden, the whole land of the Red Sea, and the whole and the whole land of the east of India, and on the Red Sea, and the mountains thereof, and all the land of Bashan, and all the land of Lebanon, and the islands of Kephtor, and all the mountains of Sinir and Ammana, and the mountains of Ashur, which is Assyria, in the north, and all the land of Elam, Ashur, Assyria, and Babel, and Suzan, and Maadai, and all the mountains of Ararat. And this is the part that I find interesting. And all the region, and all the region beyond the sea, which is beyond the mountains of Ashur towards the north, a blessed and spacious land, and all that is in it is good. So all the region beyond the sea. Well, if we go to our map here, you'll see this here is the Mediterranean Sea in this little bit right here. Assyria is somewhere in this region here. Okay, and now the difference between a sea and an ocean is that seas are usually somewhat enclosed by lands, or partially enclosed by land, and then the ocean is just kind of like open, kind of engulfing or surrounding the land. So Assyria is in this region here, So this would be the Mediterranean Sea, the Black Sea, I think also. Black Sea might be up in here. This is the Mediterranean Sea. This is a little piece of land here, land barrier, but I don't count this as being like an actual land barrier because it's very thin, it's very small, and I think at certain points the water may rise or something like that, but it's not really a true land barrier because it gives way so that there can be water in here to create this little piece of sea in here. So anyway, if we go back and look at the scripture, it says that he inherited all the land, being all of the region beyond the sea. So this north of the mountains of Ashur, which would be Assyria. So this is Assyria in this area. We know up here this is Japheth land. We know this is Japheth land up here in the north. If we kind of go north and then we go beyond the sea, it goes straight into North America. We know we can't go like up this way because it can't be talking north this way because of the simple fact that this runs into Japheth's land. So this would not be where Shem inherited or what Shem inherited. So if we go off, beyond the sea here, this is the sea, we go beyond the sea, we can't go this way. So we go beyond the sea and we go up north towards it, not straight across or down here. But if we go from Assyria, point north and go beyond the sea over here, all the region beyond the sea, it goes straight into North America. So my point is saying that if this scripture, if I'm understanding it correctly, and if this is, right, who's to say that Shem would not have inherited this land called North America? That his people, his descendants, his sons, his children, his daughters or whatnot, would not have been living on this land. Like I said before, we know a lot of people have come to the North Americas, you just clearly look at what it is today. There's been a lot of invaders, a lot of people that has put their foot on this land. But who's to say that this land wasn't inherited to Shem? Now, this is just something to think about. I'm not saying this is fact and this is gold, whatever. I'm just saying this is something to think about because if you go beyond the sea, it goes straight into this land over here, the North America. The Caribbean is considered North America as well, so that would still be North America. It hits straight into this region. So I found that interesting, and I saw the woman that was talking about it. I thought that was interesting. She got me thinking, so I just want to share that, you all. I don't know what you guys think about that, but I just thought that was interesting. Like, what if this is actually, what if what if this is correct, so anyway, I just want to share that, and I think I got out everything that I wanted to talk about, and I apologize if this long video, I definitely didn't want to go this long, so I apologize for that, but there was a lot of information that I wanted to share, and I hope it was a blessing. If it was, like, comment, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video. Thanks for watching. Shalom, shalom, shalom.